Back at the Oakland Coliseum, we're set for the introduction of the A's and the Blue Jays, and here is public address announcer Roy Steele.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to game number 1 of the American League Championship Series. At this time, we would like to introduce the manager and starting lineup for the American League Eastern Division champions, the Toronto Blue Jays. The manager, number 43, Cito Gaston. Leading off, number 15, Lloyd Mosby, center field.
Let's go, Steve.
Batting second, number 3, Mookie Wilson, right field.
All right.
Hitting third, number 19, Fred McGriff, first base. Batting fourth, number 11, George Bell, left field. In the fifth position, number 1, Tony Fernandez, shortstop. Hitting sixth, number 12, Ernie Witt, catcher. Batting seventh, number 17, Kelly Gruber, third base. Hitting eighth, number 13, Lee Mazzilli, designated hitter. And in the ninth position, number 2, Nelson Liriano, second base. In the bullpen, tonight's starting pitcher for Toronto, number 37, Dave Stieb. And now the remainder of the Blue Jays players, coaches, trainers, and equipment managers. And now, your 1989 American League Western Division champion, Oakland A's. The manager, number 10, Tony La Russa. The leadoff batter, number 24, Ricky Henderson, left field. Batting second, number 4, Carney Lansford, third base. Hitting third, number 33, Jose Canseco, right field. Batting fourth, number 39, Dave Parker, designated hitter. In the fifth position, number 42, Dave Henderson, center field. Hitting sixth, number 25, Mark McGuire, first base. Batting seventh, number 36, Terry Steinbach, catcher. Hitting eighth, number 2, Tony Phillips, second base. And in the ninth position, number 9, Mike Gallego, shortstop. In the bullpen, tonight's starting pitcher for Oakland, number 34, Dave Stewart. And now the remainder of the A's players, coaches, trainers, and equipment managers. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the center field area as the United States Army Recruiting Station Color Guard from Oakland present the colors for tonight's game. To honor Canada, please rise for the playing of the Canadian National Anthem.
Come on.
And now, to honor America, please join in the singing of our national anthem as performed by national recording artist Jeffrey Osborne.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red clapped, the bombs bursting in air came proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
So the Toronto Blue Jays and the Oakland A's are set for game one of their best of seven. Bob Costas and Tony Kubek will have the call. We'll be back after this from your local station.
Baseball team gets to play out a scene like this 3 times. For the Toronto Blue Jays, celebration number 1 came Saturday in their new home, the Sky Dome. They finally put the game Orioles away and clinched their 2nd division title. For the A's, clinching day came a bit sooner and was more of a foregone conclusion. Their 2nd AL West title in a row and their 8th since coming to Oakland. Now, the A's and the Jays, 2 teams hoping for 2 more postseason celebrations, meet in the playoffs. NBC Sports presents the American League Championship Series. From the Coliseum in Oakland, it's game 1, the Toronto Blue Jays versus the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland A's drew a franchise record of just under $2.7 million this year, and on a gorgeous night, 65 degrees, light breeze, obviously every seat filled, as they try to return to the World Series and avenge last year's loss to the Dodgers. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas, along with Tony Kubek. Both of these teams, in a sense, at least it's the public perception, have scores to settle. So my question to you is that really true in the clubhouses, or is it more media hype? Are the Toronto Blue Jays haunted by their failures of '85 and '87?
Bob, I think, and we were there last Friday night up in the Sky Dome in Toronto, they played 4 very poor innings against the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore could not finish them off. And when they won that ball game in extra innings, I thought it took a lot of monkey off their backs.
What about the Oakland Ball Club? Baseball's best on paper and deepest, and last year they were solidly favored in the World Series. We know what happened, the Dodger miracle.
Well, they were hurt most of the year. They got well about the middle of August. They perhaps had as good of September as anybody in the American League. Depth in their pitching staff from 1 through 10. You know about Canseco. You know about McGuire and Parker. The 2 guys that set the table are incredible. Lansford batting 2nd and Ricky Henderson. Do they have a vulnerability offensively? Yeah. This team, starting for Tony La Russa today, grounded into 131 double plays, and they're going against a sinker ball pitching staff for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Dave Stieb will pitch for the Jays, as you know, 17-8. Dave Stewart wins 20 or more for the 3rd consecutive year. He went 21-9, and Tony La Russa hands him the ball for game 1. We'll be back with the first pitch right after this.
Championship Series is brought to you by Buick and your Buick dealer. The great American road belongs to Buick. By Anheuser-Busch. We brew our fine quality beers to be enjoyed responsibly. Remember, know when to say when. By the good time, great taste of McDonald's. And by Die Hard, America's most trusted replacement battery. Die Hard, with more power when you need it most. And now, here's tonight's Die Hard starting lineup.
Dave Stewart getting set to face Cito Gaston's lineup of Mosby, Wilson, McGriff, Bell, no longer the DH. The tender elbow has improved enough so that he can play left field, hit cleanup, Fernandez, Witt, Gruber, Mazzilli, and Liriano. And we're underway. Fastball high and outside for ball one to Mosby, who's hitting .221, but played a big role over the weekend when they clinched against Baltimore. And he lines one to center. Dave Henderson started in, drifts back, and Hendu puts it away.
During batting practice on the off day yesterday, Bob, the Oakland Athletics hit right about this time, and they felt on a sunny day, which it is, for perhaps a couple of innings, it might be a little tough to pick up the ball. Sun field, right field, that'll be Canseco's field.
But a twilight start isn't nearly the factor that it would be at mid-season. There have been all-star games played on the West Coast with the early starting time because of national TV, and the hitters have had trouble. Won't come into play nearly as much in October. Mookie Wilson takes outside. The plate umpire is one of the game's best, senior member of the crew, Dave Phillips. He'd work the plate again if the series goes the full 7. Got the corner, 1-1. Dan Morrison at first, Dale Ford at second, Darrell Cousins at third, Steve Palermo right field line, Rick Reed left field line. Fouled off 1 and 2.
Bob, you want to know what a factor the sun might be early in right field? Jose Canseco with no sunglasses, but he has been shading his eyes, looking through the webbing of his glove. Does not appear he can see the ball off the bat even. Dips above the seats. Could be a lot of trouble.
And down goes Mookie Wilson.
The forkball. You know, a lot has been made about how tender or tired the arm of Dave Stewart is. Well, the man's had 110 regular starts the last 3 seasons. And Don Drysdale said this among other pitchers. A third of the time, you're not going to have your good stuff. If he's got 10 good fastballs in him, that may be all he needs, because he's no longer just a power pitcher.
The slumping Freddie McGriff. He won the home run title with 36, one more than the Indians' Joe Carter. Doesn't catch up with the high inside heat. McGriff has not hit a home run, though, since September the 4th.
This is the 4th game now consecutively that Cito Gaston has flip-flopped McGriff and Bell in the lineup.
It's popped down the left field side, and it drops untouched in the bullpen area. One thing about Stewart, and he's not bashful about saying it up front, he wants to get ahead of you. He wants to throw a first pitch strike. It's futile to go up there taking against him. You got to be wailing away and try and get him early in the count. Has Steinbach's sign and misses high and away. The forkball is his equalizer. His best fastball is in the vicinity of 92. But some scouts say he's lost about 5 miles per hour off it in the last couple of weeks with some shoulder tenderness. He gets 2 strikeouts to open the first. 50,000 roaring in the Coliseum. Their heroes get their licks when we come back. Hard to believe that in all those days of the Oakland dynasty under Charlie Finley with Reggie and the others, 5 straight division titles, 3 straight world championships. They didn't even average 1 million fans during that period of time. They drew just over 800,000 in one of those world championship years. These days, they're approaching 3 million. Dave Stieb getting ready. Ricky Henderson, Carney Lansford, second in the batting race to Kirby Puckett. Canseco in right. Parker, the DH and cleanup man. Dave Henderson, who's played on 4 straight division winners since '86. Mark McGuire at first, Steinbach to catch. Phillips at second, and Gallego rather than Walt Weiss. Weiss is okay coming back off the injured knee, but he simply hasn't played as well as Gallego, the guy La Russa calls the unsung hero of the team. And Tony said, I'm going to go with the guys who contributed the most in terms of getting us here.
Plus Gallego at 340 off the Blue Jays this year. Dave Stieb, his last outing against the Tigers, and Ron Schuler, the advanced scout for Oakland, followed this team for weeks. He threw 75% breaking balls of his 120 pitches. That does not mean that you will see that today. Ricky Henderson, they like to straighten him up early with fastballs inside, get him out of his crouch.
But if you miss with it, he'll launch it. Inside for a ball. He holds the all-time record with 40 game-opening home runs.
Mookie does have sunglasses on in right field. About another half inning, there'll be a glare in his eyes. You can expect the Oakland Athletics to try and run on these outfielders' arms.
Mosby's got a good arm in center. Bell is subject to misplays in left, and Wilson should be a weakness in right. Stieb behind on the count, 3-0. Strike one, says Dave Phillips.
It'll be interesting to see during this series, that may vary from umpire to umpire, how they call the strike zone on Ricky Henderson. Will it be when he's in his crouch, as it should be, or when he stands up and hacks away at the high pitches and get out of it when it's on the way? There is a difference. What it does for Henderson is he's in the crouch. If he feels like hacking at a fastball up, he can hit it, and it's a good pitch for him to hit. If he wants to take it, it's a ball. So in both instances, with that kind of umpiring, he's got the edge.
Stieb has battled back to a full count, and here it comes. Breaking ball misses inside. The Major League stolen base leader is aboard. He swiped 77 this year. The 9th time he's stolen better than 50. That's an American League record. Cobb did it 8 times. The Major League mark is held by Lou Brock with 12 seasons of 50 or more.
At first base coach was Canadian Dave McGay, who is part of this Blue Jay operation. Knows Dave Stieb. He's the man who will whisper in the man on first base ear about the moves as a reminder. How quick is he to home plate and first base? What about the catcher's release? Dave McKay. Stieb is quick to first base. Very talented athlete. He can have a very high leg kick coming home and be slow.
Not going on the first pitch. Taken for a strike by Lansford. When you consider Lansford's 336, 3 points back of Puckett's league leading mark of 339, it's all the more remarkable because after the acquisition of Henderson, Lansford was placed in the second slot. He's got to take a lot of pitches to give Ricky his opportunities to run.
It hasn't bothered him since that time. He's hit about a 350 clip, and basically a lot of pitchers get their attention diverted by Ricky Henderson. They talk about Canseco, but the most distracting force in the American League is the man right high in your picture, Ricky Henderson.
He was easily the league leader. Texas's Cecil Espy next with 45. He's going, pitch inside, Witt's throw. He's in there.
Perhaps the most misleading statistic on the stat sheet is when they steal off a catcher, he gets blamed. An outstanding jump by Henderson. The second step, he is at complete full speed. Tom Trebelhorn, the manager of the Brewers, has got to appreciate this because Ricky Henderson gives him a lot of credit, or at least some of it, for helping with his base stealing. And he is 21 of 26 stealing third base.
A ball and a strike to Lansford. Squares around and then takes a strike. One reason why Lansford has thrived in the second slot. He's an excellent 2-strike hitter, seldom strikes out, and as we said, you've got to take a lot of pitches with Henderson on base in front of you. Also, he's very adept at going to the opposite field. If Ricky reaches base and steals with nobody out, your objective is to push the ball to the right side. But he's such a good hitter in that direction, he often gets base hits to right rather than just giving himself up by punching it toward the second baseman.
Well, the middle infielders are giving Henderson a lot of room. Liriano's way overplaying toward right field. That's obviously the place Canseco will try to make the out if he does. You don't ever try to make an out, but he will make it in that direction. Advance Ricky Henderson to third base. So it's up to Tony Fernandez, and if he jockeys them too close, the whole left side's open for Henderson too, or for Lansford.
Wheels around and looks him back. Mookie Wilson in right field is very close to the line for a right-handed hitter.
I believe Dave Stieb, who just called Nelson Liriano into the mound, would like to have Liriano cheat a little more toward Ricky Henderson and not force Fernandez to jockey around, leave the left side open. And I'm sure Nelson, who's a younger player, said, look, he's trying to hit the ball through the right side. Get him to third. So Steve moved him.
And Seiko on deck. Did he go around? They check it first, and he's gone. The call by Dan Morrison, working his first playoff series. He and Rick Reed are the rookie umpires. All the others have postseason experience.
A very hard slider from Dave Stieb. And Carney Lansford waited to try and give Ricky Henderson a chance to steal. Got himself in a hole, and Steve punched him out.
Jose Canseco's return from the disabled list, first game after the All-Star break, was at Toronto. He went 2 for 3 with a homer, 3 RBIs, and a stolen base. Again, Steve looks but doesn't throw. If you prorate Canseco's 17 homers and 57 RBIs in just over 200 at-bats to his 3-year average of 613 at-bats prior to this year, you get 46 homers and 154 RBIs. Here's the throw.
Whoa, that was
almost.
close. Second base umpire Dale Ford stayed back on the outfield grass fairly long. Many times you want a middle infielder, if he can, to tip you off if you're an umpire. You do them a favor, he starts charging in, and on occasion he gets a better angle, maybe you get the call. Now you can see Ford has moved about 3 strides closer.
Steve's best pitch to a right-handed hitter is that wicked frisbee slider. He'll start it at your hip, so you give up on it, and then it seems to come around the corner with tremendous lateral movement.
Many times for Steve, it depends which angle he releases it. A little bit more 3/4, he'll have more of a downward action, a little bit quicker. Drops down a little bit, it'll be more sweeping, as you said.
Here it is on 1-0. In the air to center field, Mosby. With Henderson retreating to tag. There'll be no play at third. Ricky's in there, but with 2 out.
You just saw what sometimes can happen, and it's because of Ricky Henderson. Steve knew the location. He saw the pitch selection from Ernie Witt as catcher. He wanted a slider. But because Steve has been so much more concerned with Ricky Henderson, he hung a slider and got away with it. That's what Ricky does to you.
Now Parker, his first left-handed hitter, he'll throw a few more curves to lefties, and then he'll come more over the top. Rather than the 3/4 motion, he'd favor, obviously, to a right-handed hitter. There's a strike. At age 38, Parker not yet ready to surrender to time. After a woeful start, he was under 200 in the first month. He rebounds to hit 264 and drive in 97. Bouncer. Stieb spears it. Good play. And he's out of the inning. He walked Henderson to start. Ricky stole second. But he gets no farther than third. Scoreless after 1. Rolaids is happy to present the Rolaids 1989 Relief Man Award in the American League to Jeff Russell of the Texas Rangers. 6-4 with 38 saves, a total of 106 points. Rolaids was proud to have brought the relief break every week on the Game of the Week each Saturday here on NBC. Mark Davis, the great left-hander of the San Diego Padres, was of course the winner in the National League. On we go now to the second inning. Dave Stewart worked a perfect first, fanning both Mookie Wilson and Fred McGriff on forkballs.
And you saw 2 different kinds of forkballs. He has refined that pitch, along with Dave Duncan, the pitching coach, to the point where he can throw it at several different speeds, even make it go away from a right-handed hitter. Usually goes down and away from a left-handed hitter. Spread the fingers differently, apply different pressure, and he makes it do tricks. And that's why a little off his fastball isn't going to hurt him. He's now got different pitches at different speeds.
George Bell drove in 104 this year. Takes high for a ball. 3rd time in the last 4 years he's topped 100. With Robin Yount and Ruben Sierra not playing for contenders, Milwaukee dropped out the last 6 weeks or so. Fouls it back, and with his own teammate Fred McGriff and Cal Ripken having slumping Septembers, with Canseco missing half the year with an injury, Lansford not having the power numbers, Harker a DH, there's a natural prejudice against the guy who doesn't play the field and play all around. Bell might very well emerge as the MVP. In tight to him.
If Dave Stewart is having some arm weariness, that last fastball and the one that George Bell was late on inside with no indication. Bell over the last month and a half has moved up on the plate, gone into more of a crouch, puts his head right in the strike zone.
3-1. For what it's worth, the pitch just prior to that one, the fastball in tight, was clocked at 90. So all the talk about the shoulder tenderness may prove to be accurate as we move along in innings, but here he's throwing pretty well. Hammered to center field, and it may drop in there. It does. Bell has the game's first hit.
So at least in that series of pitches, the pitching philosophy to Bell, and that's only one at bat, was to try and pound him in. That of course will change as George changes and tries to figure out the opposition pitching.
Up steps Tony Fernandez, a .299 career hitter entering this season. Hit in the face by a Cecilio Guante pitch in early April after he had hit a grand slam earlier in the game. He missed a month and may have been tentative after that. That may have contributed to his uncharacteristically low average.
An unlikely fifth place hitter. Tony did have a career high 11 home runs, but Ernie Witt been a slump. Kelly Gruber against left-handers was hurt and then wasn't hitting, so Fernandez got hot, hit about .290 for the month of September, and they've put him back there to protect Bell now. It's been McGriff for a lot of September.
Lansford on the infield grass. Strike called. Fernandez has hit as high as .322 a couple of years ago. But while his batting average has soured, his glove work remains very sweet. He set a major league record with only 6 errors this year. Eddie Brinkman had kicked only 7 for the 1972 Tigers. Only a half dozen errors for Fernandez, who's likely to win his 4th consecutive Gold Glove.
Been a very frustrating year for Tony, aside from the fielding. Walked off the field or up in runway in Kansas City, left the game in the 7th inning after 3 strikeouts in there. Missed a turn at bat in Detroit completely. Just forgot to go to the on-deck circle, and Gruber hit.
Cito Gaston was less than thrilled about those episodes. Just off the outside corner. Gaston doesn't let his emotions show, at least not to the press very much, but he couldn't contain himself after Fernandez forgot to hit, as you say, and in effect took himself out of a game. He was livid.
Sparky Anderson, perhaps late in the season, had the best description or comparison of Gaston. He said he's like Walter Alston, very quiet. Of course, Walter had those great years with the Dodgers. He said, but every player knows they better not cross him behind closed doors.
Bell with a modest lead at first. A 2-1 pitch. He's running, and this is going to drop in. A hit-and-run base hit. Bell wheels around second. He's going to make it. Runners at the corners with nobody out.
Ideal hitter's pitch and runner's pitch. 2 balls, 1 strikes, and if Cito Gaston has done one thing perhaps a little differently than the first manager this year, Jimmy Williams, maybe he's run a little bit more, hit and run a little bit more with certain guys. He's a hitter's manager. By that I mean he lets players hit 3-0, 3-1, even if you're a weaker hitter.
Ernie Witt with an RBI chance. The last remaining original Blue Jay, taken in the expansion draft prior to their maiden season of 1977. Threw the fastball by him.
Tony Fernandez on a couple of false steps, had Gallego at short, way out of position covering second base. Tony will do that a lot. Fernandez perhaps doesn't have quite the speed before the knee surgery 2 off seasons ago.
They play for the double play. They'll concede the game's first run on a ground ball. 1-1. Witt is 37 years old, which would be remarkable for a starting catcher until the last few years when Carlton Fisk and Bob Boone have tested the outer limits in terms of age for a catcher. Jim Sundberg just retired this year, played till nearly 40. This is a 1-1 pitch. The runner going. They don't throw through. The count goes to 1-2, and Fernandez gets the stolen base.
And Terry Steinbach is a pretty good throwing catcher. Ron Karkovice of the White Sox, Joel Skinner of Cleveland have stronger throwing arms, but when you combine the strength of his arm, the accuracy that he's had most of this year, and the release, he gets the ball down in a hurry, and that'll show you what kind of jump Fernandez had off Stewart. There was just absolutely no chance.
Kelly Gruber's on deck. He lays off. They check at third, but Darryl Cousins says no. Tony La Russa, he'll be 45 tomorrow. Manager of the year with the '83 White Sox when they won 99 and lost in the playoffs to the Orioles, and again got the honor last year when the A's won a franchise record 104. They led the majors with 99 wins this year despite all the injuries. 2-2 pitch grounded sharply and foul.
In postseason play, it's the age-old thing in baseball. You play away from home as the Blue Jays are. You want to at least split. And should they do that, of course, they'd like to have this game. It would take a lot of the pressure off Game 2 starter. Todd Stottlemyre pitching first time in postseason play at a very young age.
Blue Jays trying to jump on Dave Stewart early here. Full count to Ernie Witt.
You know, it's interesting. Stewart should be the starting pitcher in Game 1 because of his postseason experience. But even he admitted that the best starting pitcher for this team this year was Mike Moore. In almost every department except wins, Moore has better numbers.
Moore goes tomorrow against Stottlemyre. Here's the payoff.
But Tony La Russa said no emotions involved at all. I didn't do it because I was sentimental and because Stewart has won over 60 games in 3 years. He said he's the big money pitcher around you, the big game pitcher, has been for several years, and he does have the postseason experience.
Another 3-2 pitch. Spanked to center field. It's going to get a run home. Henderson makes the catch. Bell tags. Fernandez will hold at second. It's 1-0 Toronto.
You just had a chance to see the difference in the throwing arms among these outfielders. Henderson, not a great throwing arm, but you saw how long a throw that was to freeze Fernandez. Canseco has a great throwing arm, sometimes erratic. There's Dave Henderson in center field. Earlier on this year, when he was forced to play a lot and his legs got very sore with all the other players' injuries, even his throwing went downhill a little bit. Couldn't push off, couldn't get going, but now he's completely healthy. He has a flair in postseason play. He loves the spotlight.
With the '86 Red Sox, the '87 Giants at the end, although he was ineligible for the playoffs, and the A's the last 2 years. So 4 straight division winners. And a ball to Kelly Gruber. He and George Bell were second on the team with 18 homers, half of McGriff's team and league leading total. Lee Mazzilli, the DH, next. Two 2-0, a run home here. Top half of the second. Stewart, as you say, has the postseason experience. A minor contributor in 1981 with the world champion Dodgers. Last year, a no decision in Game 1 at Fenway Park in the playoffs. Then the winner in the clincher over Bruce Hurst in Game 4 here as they swept.
You ever notice how different batting stances among different organizations, that people copy each other? When George Bell went into that crouch and started hitting very well, you saw Kelly Gruber almost playing follow the leader. It's if George can do it, why don't I do it? So he moved up on the plate a little bit, got in a deeper crouch. There's Jorge, the Dominican Republic. He is a smart hitter. So he's a lot of bad pitches, but a very smart hitter.
3-0 pitch. Walks him on 4 pitches uncharacteristically, not just because of the walk, but because Stewart has been behind on every hitter in this inning.
The batter, number 13.
From low home plate, you can see Dave Stewart coming right at you in slow motion. He didn't miss by much, but right there is a pitch where you can see with Gruber staying in the crouch, a ball that appears to be about belt high. Because I'm staying in the crouch, it's called a ball.
With Bell able to return to the outfield, Mazzilli becomes the DH. And the switch hitter fouls it off. They've taken to referring to the two who came over from the Mets as Mizuki. Mazzilli and Mookie, seasoned veterans, each made a contribution. Wilson more on the field. Mazzilli with his clubhouse presence as much as anything else. He's a wise old head, and he also throws in a few key hits.
And a lot of key walks to start rallies or keep them going. He's one of the few Blue Jays who will take a walk. Mookie, well, he's had a positive attitude. Tremendous speed, as you all know, which has really spiced up the offense a little bit. You can even see postseason play, taciturn Freddie McGriff having an animated conversation with Mookie on the bench.
Blue Jays lead it here 1-0 and looking for more in the second. A ball and 2 strikes.
Mazzilli should see a lot of action because it'll be 4 right-handed starters. Mazzilli better from the left side than the right.
Kurt Young is the A's 5th starter, a lefty, not scheduled to start a game in the series. 2-2. We told you about Stewart in the playoffs last year. In the World Series, he started game 1. When he left, the A's led 4-3. His effort was washed away on the scoreboard and in the memory bank by Kirk Gibson's heroics in the 9th, so he got a no decision. Then he lost game 4 to Tim Belcher. His 2-2 pitch coming to Mazzilli. Got him looking. 3rd strikeout for Stewart.
And it was right on the black and right at the knees. It appeared to be a hard forkball, or he turned it over and got a sinker. But it's right there on the edge, and a nice caress job by Terry Steinbach to frame the outside corner. Terry Steinbach helped.
Liriano steps in.
What Stewart was trying to do, Bob, is prevent a big inning, obviously. You get a couple men out with nobody out, and you get the sac fly, and the throw by Henderson was so strong it froze Fernandez at second base, so he couldn't go to third and score on a sac fly, and he just wanted to prevent a 3-4 run inning. He's on the verge of it.
1-1 to the Blue Jays second baseman. With 99 wins this year, Oakland played .611 baseball. But Toronto's percentage after Gaston took over was exactly that, .611, 77-49. They were 12-24 when the axe fell on Jimmy Williams. They were as far back as 10 behind in early June before rallying to overtake Baltimore. 2-1.
You know, Cito Gaston has managed 126 major league games before this one. And over that same span, that's the best managerial record in the major leagues. So the Blue Jays are not a fluke. They struggled early. But you don't know which team you're going to get. I mean, they can be very erratic. Base running can drive a manager up the wall, as can their overthrowing of cutoff men. Sometimes they're not a very smart team.
Gaston was the hitting coach for 6 years before becoming the manager. So he saw them blow the 3-1 lead against Kansas City in the '85 playoffs. Saw them lose their last 7 in a row to give up the division in '87. Full count now to Liriano.
They have pushed Stewart very hard this inning, you can see, and it'll be interesting to see what toll it'll take later on. The big inning build-up after 3 years. But it's a very strong Oakland bullpen.
since entering the Oakland rotation in '86. Stewart has taken the ball every time. He's never missed a start. The runners go on the 3-2 pitch, and it's lined through the hole. They'll have at least one more. And then Canseco kicks it in right, which isn't going to cost them. Fernandez scores. Gruber stops at third. 2-0 Toronto.
You know, you hear so much about the bashers on this Oakland ball club and the power of McGriff and Ball on the other side, but the supporting cast for the Blue Jays might be a little stronger. Look at Fernandez with his RBIs. Lee and Liriano have driven in a little over 80 runs between them. And this guy's got a lot of big hits. Broken up a couple of no-hitters late. Cascos and Nolan Ryan, and that'll get Tony La Russa out.
3 singles, a walk, and a sacrifice fly. The Jays have 2 runs and 2 on with 2 out here. La Russa said he called his team together in spring training, and he said, look, revenge for the World Series defeat is too negative an emotion to carry us through 162 games. Look at it the other way. Look at the 104 wins, the sweep over Boston. Think how good all of that felt, and motivate yourself by wanting to repeat that plus one more step, the World Series. He isn't bitter about what happened last October against the Dodgers. He says, we know we had the better team, but they played better, and I can live with it.
All kinds of messages going on. Lansford to Gallego. Gallego went all the way out to left field to Henderson. Changed their pitching pattern and played Mosby a little differently than they did his first time up when he lined to center field. Most teams have been throwing him a lot of hard stuff. Show him fastballs inside, and then last week they've gone away with him to make him hit the left field. Playing about straight away now in the outfield.
Lansford in close at third. Stewart's 1-0 pitch. A called strike. It looked like Stewart would minimize the damage. They had runners at second and third with nobody out, and looked like he would escape with only 1 run, but then Liriano whistled one through the right side. The runner goes. Steinbach throws to the shortstop.
That's what it was. That's the play they were talking about right there. They thought they'd trap the runner Gruber off third base. It's an old play that works in high school at times. Doesn't work too much at a major league level. I still think you're better off throwing through, and the shortstop and second baseman coordinate it. 2 good throws, 1 to second and 1 back to home, can get the fastest runner if executed properly. Tony tried a trick play.
The Jays are a base hit away from busting it open now. On the fists into shallow left center. 2 Hendersons, and it's Dave, the center fielder. Toronto scores 2, leaves 2, and we're back in 2 minutes. A good year for both these clubs. Oakland leading the majors with 99 wins, and Toronto rallying from the big deficit to come back and win the American League East. After the end of the Oakland dynasty, the 5 straight division titles and the 3 world championships, the American League East won 9 out of the next 10 playoffs against the West. The only exception was Kansas City's breakthrough in 1980. But since then, the West has won 3 of the last 4, and really within an out of making it 4 straight. Had Henderson not hit the home run against the Angels in the 9th inning at Anaheim in 1986, it would have been 4 straight American League West appearances in the World Series. And the A's, of course, are favored in this one.
Say, did you see a while ago, before we showed a shot of that blimp, the airplane dragging the little trailer with the Jose Canseco hotline number on it? Little advertising for Canseco.
Well, that number, and I provided purely as a public service, would be 1-900-234
no.
Jose.
That's ridiculous. No, don't.
Well, there you go.
What a bad idea.
It's brutal.
Not you giving the number, but
they're making
Jose
a lot of money
that
on it. But whoever advised him to do it did not do the young man's image any favors at all. Dave Henderson. Breaking ball from Stieb for a strike. I happened to call the hotline just the other day just to check it out. I did.
You make me sick.
It was a journalistic move on my part. The 0-1 pitch. Well hit.
Wow.
Goodbye. I mean, this is crushed. The fan who caught it was sitting in San Jose, I think. What a thunderbolt.
Yeah, Dave Stieb's hometown. Dave Stieb got the 2-0 lead, and he said, well, I'll just get ahead of him with a fastball, and Dave Henderson didn't waste any time. McGuire finished pretty well.
The
Some of this power.
characteristic Dave Henderson jump after the swing. Watch. We saw it in the postseason in '86.
Some of that power, and remember up in Seattle, didn't hit many until Darren Johnson, hitting instructor for the California Angels this year, told him you got a lot of strength, you ought to sit on certain pitches and hit a little bit harder. He was a good student.
1-2 to McGuire, who hit only .231 this year, but did hit 33 home runs. Got one on Sunday in the final regular season game against Kansas City. 7 of his last 14 hits in the regular season went over the fence.
Over the last couple of weeks, he's made a little adjustment. He's pulled that left foot away from home plate, opened up a little bit, and he says he's seen the ball better. Looking at the ball with just one eye, too closed. Stieb breaking ball. McGuire didn't think he went far enough. Stieb, when he's right, has the kind of slider, I guess like Ron Guidry in his prime or Steve Carl. You know it's coming, and even if you do, it doesn't matter. It just keeps biting, and it's so hard, so short, breaks so late, and it still fools you.
One out and a run in, and here's Steinbach. Fouling one to the seats. The strikeout was Stieb's second. Crowd still buzzing about Henderson's home run. That thing was really launched. That had to be in the vicinity of 460.
First inning, Stieb threw just over a dozen pitches, and I think he only threw 3 fastballs. Wished he hadn't thrown that one to Henderson.
2-1 Toronto. That thing went at least 2/3 of the way to the back bleacher wall.
Day baseball, the ball carries in this ballpark. Night baseball, it's really tough to hit them out of here. Like McGuire and Canseco in that '87 season when everybody's hitting home run, they kept track. And Canseco thought he lost maybe a dozen to 15 home runs here. Balls that might have been out in day baseball or most other parks. And it's starting to cool down now.
Strikeout number 3 for Stieb. Let's take another look at the home run by Henderson.
Watch the bat speed through the ball. He hits his back so hard there was no deceleration on contact. Hindu. He loves the spotlight, as we said. He's a little bit of a showboat. I don't think he got any of that from Ricky Henderson. He had it before he came here.
The valuable utility man Tony Phillips played every infield spot for them this year, and the corner spots in the outfield, left and right. Off-speed breaking ball drops in there. Phillips was the last out of the World Series. Hershiser got him on strikes, and Oakland's dream ended right there. In 5 games. Would have been shocking enough for them to lose under any circumstances, considering the Dodgers' injury-racked roster. But LA did it 4 games to 1.
And if strategy dictated over this series, Phillips could be the 3rd catcher behind Steinbach and Hassel. A pupil of Clete Boyer when he was here for Billy Martin and Jackie Moore as the 3rd base coach, and to work with Philip defensively.
Pop back. Lots of foul territory in this park, but not enough in this case.
And basically the 2 parks in this championship series in the American League, the Sky Dome and here, are built primarily for pitchers. And some of the power in these 2 teams, specifically McGriff and Canseco and McGuire, I mean, it doesn't matter what park it is. But there is an edge with that foul territory to the pitcher and the dimensions.
Symmetrical park, 330 down each line, 375 to the alleys, 400 straightaway center. 2-2, 2 out, nobody on, and a run home on the Henderson homer, making it 2-1 Toronto. That was Dave Duncan you saw a moment ago to Tony La Russa's left, the highly esteemed pitching coach of the A's, and perhaps someday soon a big league manager. Lots of clubs covet him. In the air to left, toward the gap. Bell can't get it. It's by him to the wall. Phillips with at least a double as George fires it back in.
There's a time to play shallow and a time to play deep. And when you get 2 outs, ordinarily, they will move the outfielders back several steps. George Bell. Phillips does not have good power in that direction. Apparently the defensive alignment or John McLaren from the dugout did not move him, and the ball beat him deeply.
So up steps Gallego. Last year Weiss was the rookie of the year. 3rd straight time an A's player won the award. Canseco, McGuire, then Weiss. But knee surgery sidelined Walt for 2.5 months. And even when he came back, he was shaky, especially on balls where lateral movement was required. Gallego played a sparkling short in his place and draws the start in game 1 of the playoffs. A base hit could tie it, and he takes down and away.
Most pitchers will agree the 2 most important parts of a ball game. When you first go out there, get your feet on the ground in a hurry for inning number 1. Don't give up runs early, and then once your team scores, there's Walter in North Carolina. He may play tomorrow off Stottlemyre. Once your team scores, that's when you want to shut the team down and get your team back in as quickly as you can so you can tack some more runs out. Steve on the verge of a tie right in this situation with a base hit. You know, playing against Steve, you might think, if you had scouting reports in depth, you might think he might be a breaking ball hitter too.
That one's in there, 1-2. Steve won 17 this year for the 3rd time in his career. He's twice been a 16-game winner as well, but 17 is his high water mark. He had the lowest ERA in the American League for the decade. His rookie year was 79. His ERA in the 80s was 3.32, the league's lowest. Check swing, and the count levels at 2-2. With the DH, of course, ERAs in the American League, no matter how good the pitcher, generally higher than in the National. Smaller ballparks, too. Center field Mosby has it lined up. The A's settle for 1. And we're back after these messages from your local station. The A's jump back into it.
By Geo. Get to know Geo. Sold and serviced by Chevrolet Geo dealers. And by AT&T, the right choice.
Stewart set to face Wilson, McGriff, and Bell in the 3rd, and Toronto leading 2-1. Mookie struck out his first time up.
He doesn't let too many first pitch fastballs go by. Not a very disciplined hitter. Otherwise, he'd be in the leadoff spot instead of Mosby, so they start him off with a forkball.
Yeah, people wonder why not lead Mookie off. Well, since putting on a Toronto uniform, he's walked only 3 times while striking out 37.
Well, that's one of the big differences in these 2 lineups. We talked about Henderson, Rickey, and Lansford. Lloyd Mosby's been getting on base about 30% of the time this season. Very low for a leadoff hitter. In fact, awful. And Mookie not much better. And that makes George Bell's 100+ RBIs even that much more sensational. He didn't have a lot of men in front of him. And they tried Fernandez there earlier. Very low on base percentage.
Stewart's ahead of him, 1-2. Bouncing ball by Stewart and by Gallego into center field for a leadoff hit.
So we've got a Rickey Henderson situation now on the other side.
Fred McGriff struck out on a forkball his first time up. Mookie at first. He stole 12 for Toronto.
Interesting thing, Bob, with a Fred McGriff up, you've got a lot of options. If he were hitting well and he finished September very poorly, you wouldn't run Mookie at all. You'd keep that right side open. But remember the last game we saw up in Toronto, first and third. McGriff up 3-1. They start Mookie, and what Cito Gaston started to do, because McGriff was taking too many pitches, he's trying to force him to swing the bat now when he's in a slump and not take so much. So it changes the picture right here, and that's in Ron Shooter's scouting report. With McGriff up, Mookie has run.
Schuler, the A's advanced scout. Tony La Russa relying on his advice very heavily. In fact, calls him a genius. Bluffs the go. Line drive, right center field. Henderson started back, now comes in, and shoestrings it as Wilson goes back. That ball fooled him and most of the people in the park off the bat. He thought it was hit much better.
Anytime you got a slugger like that, swings so hard, and he hits the ball on the end, or in this case on the fist, you can get fooled. But the interesting part is how quickly he recovered. He circles it, but still, the quickness and the legs now well made a nice recovery.
Bell singled and scored in the second. He and the Oakland team have a history. He was hit by Gene Nelson in May. He charged the mound, suspended 2 games because of the ensuing brawl. Bob Welch also hit him with a pitch later in the season. Bell was hit in the head during his minor league career. Add that to his already volatile nature, and he doesn't appreciate being worked inside at all, and yet the book on him is pound him inside, then go away with breaking balls. John McLaren. Mike Squires, the former Gold Glove first baseman of the White Sox, on the lines at first. Wilson, who singled, is at first with 1 down. The Jays were a game under 500 when Wilson came over with Mazzilli on August 1st. They then proceeded to win 21 of their next 30.
It's interesting, a lot of credit has been given to a lot of people. Mookie and Mazzilli and Junior Felix had a good month and a half, and the Sky Dome, and I think a lot of that credit, or most of it, should go to George Bell, because he was the guy that really spurred on the offense for a good month and a half.
Dave Henderson charging, gets there.
He looks like he times about every ball out there, even when he gets a good jump, and then he kind of moves into a little rolling stop for the one-hand grab. Got a couple out in the outfield like the style. He and Ricky Henderson.
As Tony Fernandez settles into the box, see if he doesn't remind you a little bit of Rod Carew. He holds the bat loosely. He's able to snap a fastball right out of a catcher's glove with a late quick swing.
First trip in to California, Tony Fernandez got in touch with Rod Carew and went to his hitting school. Couple night games. He spent hours with him during the daytime, working on techniques, especially from the left side, working on his bunting.
Wilson's been anchored at first since his leadoff hit. 2 down now. 2-1 Toronto, top half of the third. They got 2 in the second. Henderson homered, leading off the bottom half of that inning. Dave Henderson. Not going, pitch out.
Even though he wasn't going, you could see what Mookie just did to the defense. He had Tony Phillips, the second baseman, was creeping in about halfway depth and cheating toward that bag more so he can get there if the signal is given to cover the bag. And because Gallego's so far away, he's the guy covering it almost any pitch. In a situation, you almost play a guy away and then you pitch him away, force him to hit the opposite direction so he can't pull the ball through the right side. Tony Fernandez sees all this. The plate saying, hey, look, they're going to keep it away, it looks like.
Mookie with a modest lead. Bluffs the go, another pitch out. Ernie Witt is on deck. Stewart has very good control. In 257 innings pitched, he walked 69, struck out 155. Not going again. Line drive, hit softly, backing up and taking it is Tony Phillips.
He came in and jammed him.
Little humpback liner as Stewart got the ball inside on the fists of Fernandez, and he's out of the third. Stewart with his pitching coach Dave Duncan. When Cito Gaston eventually took the reins in Toronto, everybody knows he was not the first choice of Pat Gillick, the general manager of the Blue Jays. They wanted Lou Piniella. George Steinbrenner wouldn't let him out of a contract. There was talk about Bob Baylor, their AAA manager at Syracuse. But in truth, their first choice might have been that man, Dave Duncan. But the A's will not allow their coaches to talk about managerial opportunities during the season, just as they wouldn't let Seattle approach Jim Lefevre during the season in '88, but did let him go in the winter, and he became the Mariner manager.
Maybe beyond that, primarily, Dave Duncan would not have gone, because Tony brought him back after they were fired from the White Sox, and he's one of the high-paid pitching coaches and deserves to be.
Here's Rickey taking a strike from Stieb.
For a lot of pitchers, and you saw a great angle on that hard breaking ball, that's almost a hanging curveball or slider. Hitters jump on it, but Stieb's is so hard, both left and right-handed hitters give up on it. They just don't see the spin. The rotation is so tight, you can't pick it up.
And then he'll throw that hard sinker that snakes in on a right-handed hitter on top of it. This one's hit back through the box, but it takes a friendly bounce to Fernandez, who with a great off-balance throw retires him.
Think of who is running also. And anytime a ball is away from a right-handed hitter, he usually gets a better jump. And Tony Fernandez, as the grass slowed it up, artificial surface, perhaps wouldn't, but look at the ball's away. He did get the deflection, took some speed off the mound, but Fernandez still ran 8 or 10 strides and gets Rickey Henderson. Oh, is he graceful? There's a tendency to say he throws off balance, but you can see the center of gravity was right in control.
A drive to right, Mookie Wilson toward the line into foul ground, making the catch to retire Carney Lansford.
That's an interesting spot there. When we move on to the Sky Dome, with about 12, 15 feet of foul territory in those corners, in the Sky Dome, that's going to be a problem. Late in the season, there were some balls hit down, and the fans can reach out and touch a fair ball. We'll show it to you when we get up there. Canada.
Canseco fly to center his first time up. I mentioned that, just out of curiosity, I had called that hotline a couple of days ago. Believe me, Tony, this is captivating material. What he had for breakfast, where he took a walk.
I was hoping you'd bring it back up. Not your breakfast, the hotline. No. But they may both be comparable.
You know, if in an earlier age, if only Winston Churchill or Roosevelt had thought of that, you know, the chance to just hear the thoughts of deep thinkers. 1-1 to Jose. The unanimous MVP a year ago, 307 with 42 homers, the 40 steals, and 124 knocked home.
Well, you know about the hamate bone operation on the left wrist. In fact, there have been a lot of studies. You can see him flexing it right now. His twin brother Osvaldo had the same surgery, and so there have been a lot of studies with 2 twin brothers, but you get different opinions from different people. Some say he's only 75%. Some say he only hurts it when he has a bad swing and a bad pitch. And he's constantly flexing the left hand.
Steve behind him, 3-1. Jose came up big in the playoffs last year with 3 home runs. Got one off Bruce Hurst in the first game, a key game-tying homer in Game 2 at Fenway off Clemens, and then another one off Hurst in the 4th and final game. Then he hit the grand slam off Belcher in Game 1 of the series, but that turned out to be his only hit against the Dodgers. There's the walk. Steve has walked 2 and struck out 3.
Ernie Witt will do this a lot with Dave Stieb, and as soon as he sees his release point change, which he may have seen there, he dropped down a little bit with a breaking ball, or at least flatten out the hand, and the ball stayed flat. Ernie may be just got there for a reminder. Let's get back on top. set up Al Widmar, I think, the pitching coach, because he just nodded to him that, yeah, Dave knows.
With Parker in the lineup all year as the DH, Oakland has a huge advantage in terms of production out of that slot. Bell DH'd the last week, but essentially Toronto didn't have anybody to match up with Parker most of the season. It gets away from Witt, and Canseco is at second with 2 out.
One thing Canseco has not been doing this year, he does not have many stolen bases. Of course, he missed a good part of the season, about half. But since then, he's had some hamstring pulls or some tightness in his legs, so he is not the stolen base threat this year as he was last year when he went over 40. They know where they is. That's Johnny McLaren, the third base coach, and he's a guy who will help Cito a lot. He's moving the defense. He'll also call pitch outs when there's a base stealer on for Cito Gaston.
Stieb's 1-0 pitch. Cut on and missed. Parker has never hit a postseason home run. He's had lots of chances. 74, 75, and 79 with Pittsburgh. Last year with Oakland, he's had 87 playoff and/or World Series at bats without a homer.
Got the shift on him. Not many teams do this to Dave Parker. Fernandez is right up the middle of the diamond on the first base side. Not a big overshift. In fact, it's an unusual defense to pull in the infield, and yet the outfield, you can see Mosby playing straight away. In fact, over to the third base side or left field side of the bag. So to pull on the ground, it's straight away in the air.
Parker bounced out his first time. The 1-2 pitch. Check swing foul.
So they like to throw him, Bob, excuse me, up and in if they can, but a lot of pitchers won't stick with it. He is so strong, Parker. He'll flare a ball or fight it off, and they'll go away, and that's what Dave Parker wants. A little bit away or down. Now he's moving, I think, Bell in a couple of steps in left field. With 2 strikes, they figure he'll just try and put the ball in play. It'll give Bell in left field on a base hit out that way a shot at Canseco at home plate.
A base hit could tie it. 2-1 Toronto. Bouncing ball, and the infield alignment is perfect. Fernandez had it hit right at him, and Canseco is stranded at second. 3 gone by in Oakland. 2-1 Toronto. Stewart works to Ernie Witt. Down low for a ball. Ernie had a sac fly his first time up. In that 1985 LCS, Cito Gaston was a coach under Bobby Cox. Here's a blast to deep right. Canseco turning to the track, to the wall, gone. Ernie Witt makes it 3-1 Toronto.
And is Cito Gaston happy to see his bat with 4 right-handed starters? He needs this bat to come alive, and it'll take a lot of pressure off Freddie McGrath. There is a Blue Jays section, it sounds like, behind that dugout.
They are in a distinct minority. Sounded more like a golf gallery as he made the grand tour. They're cheering back home in Toronto, though. The Jays jump in front 3-1. They won the first 2 games in '85 and led 3-1 after 4. Bobby Cox went with just 3 pitchers in that series. Stieb started the 1st, 4th, and 7th, and Key and Alexander each got 2 starts. Gruber fouls it off. Bobby Cox did an excellent job managing the Blue Jays that year, but Gaston was quoted this week as saying, "I wish we had gone with 4 starters. They could have used Jim Clancy at least once." Now, both these managers have said that they plan to go with 4, so the Game 1 starters are likely to pitch only twice. Gruber pops one to the left side. Lansford backing up. Gallego also there, and it's the shortstop Gallego.
You know, before, though, the situation might have been you didn't have that top-notch 4th or maybe even 5th starter that you like. Because Cerruti was the most consistent starter for the Blue Jays the first several months. He's now in the bullpen for Toronto and Cito Gaston, so they have 2 left-handers down there, Wells and Cerruti. But they're pretty deep. You know, Flanagan's pitched well. He'll be Game 4 starter for Toronto. Mazzilli, the hitter, he struck out his first time, and he takes a strike here.
In the '85 playoffs, Stieb was masterful in a first game victory, very effective in a fourth game no decision at Kansas City. Toronto eventually won the game, then started the seventh game and was hit hard as the series slipped away from the Jays. Dick Hauser went with 4 pitchers in that series.
You mentioned a man a while ago who just recently retired who perhaps struck the worst blow against this Blue Jays franchise. Jim Sundberg, the bases loaded off the right field fence, driving in 3, broke the game apart in game 7.
Mazzilli's gone. And it's strikeout number 4 for Stewart.
Looked at third base for the appeal, but the home plate umpire Davey Phillips didn't even ask because he'd called it all by himself. A wicked forkball. You'll see as the ball comes into your picture, it just explodes in the trajectory downward and also went away. It's Johnny Sullivan, who's usually the bullpen coach, who is there helping Cito on the bench too.
Liriano had an RBI single to right his first time up. Gave the Jays a 2-0 lead at that point. Lays off, and it's 2-0.
It's going to be a funny time of day-night, twilight, where fly balls in the air, outfielders are going to have to help each other out. You can lose them here, and a little bit difficult to see now.
Hit toward the hole. To his left is Phillips, stumbling, righting himself, and getting him at first. Witt leads off with a homer. Stewart retires the next 3. 3-1 to
third. Tony Fernandez got a lot of help from the pitcher's mound to throw out speedy Ricky Henderson. And now Tony Phillips against speedy Nelson Liriano has the thick grass slow it down, and he makes an excellent play. The wheels are spinning. Once that first foot slipped, he was a little bit off balance. The rhythm was gone, but he still threw out a very fast runner from the left side.
Henderson hit a titanic home run, leading off the second against Stieb. Stieb was joking yesterday as he misses high about the size of the lineup. I mean, you do not want to get into a street fight with these guys. Parker, McGuire, Canseco. Line drive over Gruber for a base hit. Bell had him played very deeply. Big turn for Henderson, but he's content with a single.
And you could see Hindu bust out of the batter's box, knowing the arms on this Blue Jays outfield as hard as he could. And he was at more than a third of the way down when Bell picked it up. What a guest hitter. He got a breaking ball that time and rifled it. Watch Henderson. It goes along with the axiom on the board for Tony Fernandez. I want 100% for 9 innings every day. He insists on it.
So here's another of those Bash brothers, Mark McGuire. And Steve was saying, and looking at the size of the guys on the roster, well, in the air to right, Mookie Wilson over. He's got it. Henderson played it halfway. Steve said, at least I don't have to fight them. I just have to pitch to them. But they are an awesome collection. I doubt that there's ever been a baseball team with as many huge men on it at one time. There have been teams who could match the home run totals. There have been better teams, although this A's edition is one of the best of the 80s. But I doubt that just in terms of size and strength, there's ever been a baseball team quite like this one.
Are you posing a question to me, or what?
Well,
like Moose Gower and Elston Howard,
leaving it open.
Don Larson, Bob Turley, they all weighed 230, 240, were 6'3" to 6'5", and 4.
Breaking ball line to center field. Mosby with a late break, doesn't get there. Short hops it. Henderson stops at second.
It's that twilight, and it's a funny time of day. Mookie got a good jump on the ball hitting the right field corner, and Lloyd Mosby never saw it until it was too late and well over the infield. The lights do not take effect under these kinds of conditions. Dave Henderson played it well. He didn't go halfway with more than that, and he read it very well. And Mosby thought he might get a force out, but Dave Henderson very alertly.
So the tying runs are on with 1 out here in the 4th. Phillips doubled to left center his first time up, a hot hitter in September. Hit .340 in the season's last month to finish at .262 overall. He has very occasional power. He hit 4 home runs. Dave Henderson at second. Terry Steinbach at first. A's have 4 hits. Toronto has 5. Bouncing ball slowly toward McGriff. He'll take the sure play. The runners move up to second and third, and now a single could tie it.
With nobody out, Freddie McGriff, and I think Ernie Whitt was probably hollering, get one, but McGriff might have, with nobody out in that play, gone to second base. But with 1 out, he's going to take the sure one to change the situation. And Ernie Whitt, who saw the whole play, saw the position of the runners, was yelling, take the sure one, go to first base.
Gallego the hitter with Henderson on deck. Ricky Henderson. And a strike from Stieb.
You can pretty much count a minute scoring position that you're going to get more hard sliders from Stieb than any other pitch. Doesn't mean that you're going to hit it.
Gallego fly to center his first time up. Does he go around? Phillips says he does. 0-2.
Nice stop by Whitt. Early out in the ball game, that was a pass ball that was charged to Whitt, not a wild pitch.
Pop to shallow right field. Liriano back and Wilson in. Mookie's got it, and they leave 2 men on. 4 complete in Oakland. And we're right back after these messages from your local station.
United Airlines, rededicated to giving you the service you deserve. Come fly the friendly skies.
Here we go in the 5th. First pitch swinging. Mosby bounces one to Gallego. Nice easy hop. And Lloyd is finished at first. Dave Stewart has lasted at least into the 7th inning. In 30 of his 36 starts, he's gone all the way 8 times. Didn't pitch a shutout this year. In fact, here's a very interesting stat, and it shows as much as anything the reliance on the bullpen for Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan and how deep that bullpen is for Oakland. Wilson is struck out and singled, thinks about dragging a bunt, instead takes a strike. The staff has 20 shutouts, but only 1 pitcher pitched a complete game shutout. Mike Moore, tomorrow's starter, had 3. They had 17 combined shutouts, and many of them involved not just 2 pitchers, but 3 or 4.
And you would think that would have changed over the stretch that Eckersley was out. What, about 40 days? But then Honeycutt came on and became their closer along with other people, so they are very deep.
Tell you how important Eckersley was and is. They split their 40 games without Eckersley. They went 52 and 36 without Canseco. Swing and a miss by Wilson. 2-2.
Mookie didn't like the action on that last pitch. He's saying, forkball I know, but forkball as hard as a fastball, go down like that. He might be the most accessible player on this Blue Jays team. They've had a tendency to be brooding team, sometimes whining. Since he's been around, there's been a much more positive attitude in the clubhouse, on the field, in the dugout.
He draws a walk. It's the second yielded by Stewart. You agree with all the talk through the years about clicks, dissension, finger pointing plaguing the Blue Jays?
Ernie Whitt wrote a book about it last winter that became a bestseller in Canada, and he said there are black clicks, there are Latin clicks, there are white clicks, and clicks among the clicks. Ernie Whitt also took off on some of the umpires, one crew specifically. Since then, I think he's made up with them.
Well, they started clicking after Wilson and Mazzilli got there. Clicking in a positive sense. McGriff has struck out and lined to center. There goes Mookie, bluffing the go. McGriff lifts one to right center field. Henderson goes back nearly to the track to make the catch.
He bluffed, got Gallego out of position, didn't have a good enough jump, and then stopped. And you can see how Fred McGriff, as opposed to earlier in September, is starting to swing the bat better. The last 4 or 5 games, and some of it because of the flip-flop in the lineup. McGriff hitting 4th and Bell hitting 3rd. Now it's reversed, and he has been much more aggressive in this spot. And of course, with the high on-base percentage McGriff has, it'll give George Bell more time to drive and run, or more chances.
Bell singled and scored, fly to center. Wilson easily back. Capacity crowd, but to this point in game 1, not really a playoff atmosphere. Very, very quiet. Their A's trail 3-1. Fouled off. 2 years ago, when he won the MVP, George Bell hit 47 home runs. He hit only 18 out of the park this year.
And then the following spring training, negotiating a monstrous 3-year contract. The option, I'm sure, will be picked up for the 3rd year after this season. The DH situation between he and Jimmy Williams, the ill feelings.
Gaston's main contribution, not so much strategic as psychological. He calmed the atmosphere, redirected the purpose of the team, and salvaged the season.
That was one of those situations where Jimmy Williams, the former manager, took the heat. It was an organizational decision, thinking of moving George Bell to the DH.
Oh, 0-2 now.
He's just a little bit late on Dave Stewart's fastball. So it'll give you an idea that Dave Stewart is reaching back on certain hitters. Bell in particular come up with fastballs around 90.
If Stewart's shoulder had been bothering him, one tip-off would have been if his motion had opened up. But if it's a tight, compact motion and the arm isn't flying out too far toward third base, that's an indication that he's not troubled by any soreness, which some had speculated about before the game. He has never missed a start since coming to the A's. He was just floundering around, throwing batting practice all around the National League for the Phillies, in effect. He had been 7-20 in the 2.5 years prior to '86, cut loose by the Phils, signed by the A's. Right about the time La Russa became the manager, Tony inserted him into the rotation, and he's done the job. Bell drives one hard, but foul.
This is a count, even with Bell up, no balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs, where Cito Gaston may relay through John McLaren, the third base coach, the green light for Mookie. If he steals it, he's in scoring position for Bell. If he gets thrown out, Bell starts next inning with a fresh count. And Steinbach realizes, looking into Tony La Russa to see if he wants a pitch out.
There he goes. He lays off. It's a ball. Throw from Steinbach. Bounces off Wilson's back. He's not going to go any farther than second base.
Every time Mookie had been taking that false start, he'd been reading Stewart a little bit more, reading him a little bit more. And then the forkball, you can see it tumbling, a tough one for Steinbach to throw on. Didn't appear to have a good grip. The threat of that speed, it's the one thing that overall the Blue Jays have more on. They've got a couple good runners on the bench too, especially in Junior Felix. Rob Ducey runs well.
Tom Lawless too.
You betcha.
3 steals in the game for Toronto. And Bell misses that one. Strikeout number 5 for Stewart. The Blue Jays have left 4, but they lead 3-1 as the A's come up in the last half of the 5th. Bottom half of the 5th, A's down by 2. Henderson, Lansford, and Canseco. Ricky walked, stole a base, then was robbed of a hit on a tremendous play by Tony Fernandez behind the bag at second. Hit .274 for the year with 12 home runs and 77 steals. The major's best. Vince Coleman led the National League with 65 for the Cardinals. Speaking of the Cardinals, Lou Brock is the all-time record holder in steals with 938. In for a strike, 1-1. Henderson could very well pass him next year. He's 67 behind Brock, who played 19 years, and Henderson has so far played 11. He broke Brock's single season record of 118 when he swiped 130 in 1982. And the career record is just in front of him. Two balls and two strikes. And really, he'll have it in terms of both percentage and total. When Hank Aaron passed Babe Ruth, for example, as marvelous as that achievement was, it required thousands more at-bats. In this case, Henderson will not only get the raw total, but he'll do it more quickly than the great Hall of Famer Brock. Hit hard, and McGriff's got it. A doubleheader of sorts tomorrow on NBC. Game 2 here. Young Todd Stottlemyre for Toronto, 7-7. Mike Moore, 19-11 for the A's at 12 Pacific and 3 Eastern time. And then to Wrigley Field for Game 1 of the National League Series. Greg Maddux against Scott Garrelts, Vin Scully and Tom Seaver at the mics.
Game 2 of the National League, Rick Russell against Mike Bilecki, and then Sutcliffe, I guess, is opening on the road. Maybe against Don Robinson if his knee's okay.
This is only the second time since the A's came to Oakland in 1968. Lansford taking a ball that there's been a good shot at a Bay Area World Series. In '71, they each made the playoffs. It was the first division title for the A's, and they were swept by the mighty Orioles. Giants got in against the Pirates and lost 3-1. Opposite field, gonna drop. Mookie up with it. 1-out hit for Lansford. In contrast to last year, when Lansford was hitting .400 in early June and then finished the year at .279, he really sizzled after the All-Star break this season to wind up at .336, exactly the same average he had when he won the batting title for the Red Sox in 1981.
You know, you look at the numbers that Canseco put on the board after missing half a season, playing with a little bit of it injured. At 57 RBIs with his 61 base hits. You would think, and a couple of years ago, they would bust him in on the fist. But earlier this year, we saw him take a Roger Clemens fastball and 92 or 3 and put it up on the screen. He's become a much shorter hitter with a shorter stroke. Likes the ball low, yeah. Hard stuff in on the hands. It better be weighing on the hands, and with a lot on it. He still is the most devastating offensive player in this league, I think, when healthy. And it's cut down his strikeouts, Bob, the last couple of years, and the walk total's gone up a little bit.
Struck out well over 100 times each of his 3 full years, and 69 in 227 at-bats this year. It's La Russa's contention that he's the rare hitter whose power totals actually would increase if his batting average went up, because he's so naturally strong. If he develops a more compact swing and just looks to make contact, the average is going to come up and the homers will be there almost accidentally. One on, one out on a 1-1 pitch, but first another throw over.
And you can see Ernie Witt very careful after he gave the sign of the location not to move at all, because Canseco on that last pitch looked like after the signals were down, he took a look down at what looked like the plate, but he might be looking back at where Ernie Witt setting up. He didn't do it that time.
Inside 2-1. Bottom half of the 5th. Toronto leads at 3-1. Each team has a solo homer. Dave Henderson for Oakland, Ernie Witt for the Blue Jays.
Yesterday in the off day, they watched Canseco take batting practice like they used to Ted Williams or Mickey Mantle. Everybody stops and sees them hit him into the seats, 450, near 500 feet, time and time again.
This is high and away. 3 balls and a strike. Parker on deck. There's the Cobra. Bell backed up very nearly to the warning track in left. Full count now.
Dave Stieb reaching back for a little more on his fastball. Gone away from the sinker, went with a 4-seamer and a riding fastball. Upstairs on Canseco.
Stieb comes in here a hot pitcher. He won his last 5 starts, 9 of his last 12. And in 17 of his last 23 outings, he held the opposition to 3 runs or less, almost always giving his team a good chance to win. His 3-2 pitch to Canseco. The runner goes, swing and a miss, he got him. Here's the throw, it's bounced there, and Lansford has the steal.
Lansford and Henderson, the 2 big base stealers. Lansford had over 30 during the regular season. A cut fastball.
Designated hitter, Dave Parker.
Not a strong throw. And he slides in, and the call is missed. No, wasn't missed. Second there, I thought he tagged him, but he didn't tag him on the way through.
A strong throw definitely gets him.
Oh, yeah. The hard straight in slide.
To this point, Stieb has thrown 69 pitches. Steve Horn tells us only 8 have registered better than 85 miles an hour.
John McLaren again. Puts Tony Fernandez on the first base side again, and now he's moving Mosby to left center field.
Strike 1 to Parker, who's grounded out twice.
And that's what the scoring reports provided by Gordon Lakey, the Blue Jays, and Dave Bloom, who traveled around with the Oakland A's the last couple of weeks. Pull the ball on the ground, and straight away or late in the air.
The A's have had runners in every inning. Swings over at 0-2. They've left 5.
You know, Tony Fernandez is doing something I'm surprised Parker isn't saying anything. I know Ted Williams had a rule change with Eddie Stanky. Tony is moving between the left side and the right side with the count. Now he is on the third base side for Parker. Eddie Stanky used to do that, stand back and wave his hands, do all kinds of things, and some call it the Ted Williams rule that was put in. Now Tony's back on the other side. He doesn't know where he's going. They keep moving him from one side to the other from the bench.
Lansford at second with 2 down, and another 0-2 pitch coming. When Parker started so slowly, naturally there was speculation that he had lost it, and he couldn't catch up with good heat, especially inside on him. But La Russa says when he turned a 95-mile-per-hour Dan Plesac fastball around one night in Milwaukee, he was convinced. That's a fastball from one of the game's dominating left-handers to the left-handed hitting Parker.
Well, he's in the right league because there are fewer power pitchers over here. And he may have turned one or a few others around, but basically the good hard stuff does get him if it's inside.
As La Russa puts it, perhaps giving his player the benefit of the doubt, he's got a 38-year-old body but 19-year-old wrists. What Parker has become, even as his skills have eroded somewhat, is a very positive clubhouse presence. Might not have always been that in Pittsburgh, but here he has been.
Especially for Ricky.
Opposite way, could drop, does drop. Lansford being waved home by Latchman. No play from Bell. And now you finally get the feeling on an October night in Oakland that the battle has been joined. They'd been sitting on their hands until now.
Good hitters have no fear of getting jammed, and you just saw Steve tried to pound him in several pitches. Parker never flew open with the right shoulder to try and pull the ball. He just continues to fight him off until he fought one off in front of George Bell for an RBI base hit. Boy, his biggest contribution was when McGuire had the bad back and Canseco was down. He carried this team. That's before they got Ricky Henderson. That RBI back.
Henderson with a mighty blast into the bleachers in left his first time up.
That gets the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen going.
Lined a single to left his next time. Jim Acker back for his second tour with the Blue Jays after a stop in Atlanta, getting ready. Steve works to Henderson. When the Red Sox got Henderson along with Spike Owen from Seattle late in the '86 season, He really didn't do a darn thing for Boston in the regular season and hadn't had a hit in the playoffs until he struck the crucial blow off Donnie Moore, then hit what could have been the World Championship winning home run in the 10th inning of Game 6 off Rick Aguilera, but that was washed away by what happened in the bottom of the 10th.
That breaking ball is starting to get more and more upstairs from Dave Stieb now. Trying to overthrow a little bit. Going to pop out. Maybe some quick strikes. Flat, had no downward action on the last one.
One and two to Hendu, who hit .250 for the year and struck out 131 times, which was the highest figure on the team.
Toronto went with a 9-man pitching staff, and they kept Rob Ducey, the young Canadian, to the outfield, a left-handed bat.
He's got him this time. So Steve finally retires Henderson. Parker with an RBI hit. The A's are back within one.
Oakland Alameda Coliseum. Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. The Blimp Columbia, based right nearby in Carson, California. Thanks to pilot Nick Nicolari.
Stewart's team has crept back to within a run. He works to Fernandez and gets it in there, a ball on the strike.
And Lansford's in 8-10 feet in front of the bag at third. Tony Fernandez many times will fake a bunt and do what he calls a slug bunt. Put it at the shortstop by him or try and slap it by the third baseman.
The 2-1. Popped it up. Steinbach off with the mask. Terry's got it. So Fernandez is now 1 for 3, and here's Ernie Witt, who's had a good night. A sacrifice fly to center and a home run to right.
Dead pull hitter. You get a certain left-hander. He doesn't play against many left-handers. He might try and shoot it the other way. There were some teams who put a shift on him later on in the season. Likes the ball down. Fastball, that is. If he guesses right, which a lot of catchers do, he'll guess a location and be able to adjust. He pretty much hits with his hands, Bob. He came up with that wide open stance, feet spread well apart. Takes some lower body action away, but Cito Gastonfelli kept his head steadier.
Pops this one back of short. Henderson comes in, and Ricky takes it for the second out. Head-to-head this year, the A's won 7 out of 12 from Toronto. Against the American League East, the past 2 years, they played .655 baseball, winning 110 and losing 58. The balance of power has definitely shifted. The American League East, once the best of baseball's 4 divisions, is now clearly not as good as their counterpart in the West.
Look at some of the pitching staffs in the West. Kansas City and California and Oakland. The White Sox got a lot of young, good pitchers. Seattle and Langston Deal got 3 excellent young arms. Tony La Russa, since he's been in the West, has had tremendous success against the Eastern Division, and then just the last year or two.
One pitch to Gruber. Fastball up in his eyes, and he pops it up. It's out of play in many parks.
Right here.
But Lansford's got it, leaning into the dugout.
Tommy Reynolds, the coach, saved him from tumbling head over heels. And Reynolds was right there.
A souvenir almost any place else, and it makes you admire what the man who made the catch there did with the bat this year, because how many points will that take off your average? Balls like that not going out of play. As it was, he chased Puckett to the season's last day.
Game 1 of the American League Championship Series is brought to you by your local authorized Porsche dealer.
As we move to the last half of the 6th, Steve nursing a 3-2 lead. He's given the A's 6 hits. His mates have 5 off Stewart. And McGuire may have just tied it. First pitch, see you later.
Stieb came out, and on his 81st pitch, perhaps showing a little stiffness after all those hard sliders against this slugging team. And I guess that's why Jim Acker was up in the bullpen before he even threw one pitch. One that was hit very deeply and hard by Mark McGuire.
Big week for the McGuire clan. His brother, 6'8" Dan McGuire, is a quarterback at San Diego State, transferred from Iowa. Watch what big brother Mark did on this pitch from Stieb, and he knows it. Watch the people react behind the dugout. That wasn't one of those you root on as it makes its way toward the fence. They knew it was gone in an instant.
What did his brother throw for 500 yards last weekend?
Against Utah. I wonder if there's ever been an NFL quarterback as tall as 6'8". McGuire might become the first. 1-2 to Steinbach. He struck out and singled. The game's tied at 3. You know, we were talking about Oakland's 7-5 advantage over Toronto this year and their mastery in general, the American League East. Keep in mind that unlike the National League, where you play 18 games against your own division and 12 against the other, in the American League, it's a balanced schedule. You play every team pretty much the same number of times. Steinbach goes down swinging, 5th strikeout for Dave Stieb. And since you can't play yourself, obviously, you actually wind up playing more games against the other division than your own, which makes the concept of East and West in the American League purely arbitrary. This may anger some people in Toronto and in Baltimore, but since everybody played the same number of games in essence against everyone else, the teams that really deserve to be here would be Oakland and Kansas City. Kansas City and California each had better records, finishing 2nd and 3rd in the West, than anybody in the East.
Except if you watch patterns down through the year, if a guy's got a little injury, the manager might rest him against the opposite division. In fact, they might even save a pitcher.
Sure.
Give him an extra day's rest, pitch against somebody else. But then you get another debate about why I think, and there's Dr. Robert Brown, former Yankee third baseman, Yogi's roommate, now the American League president. See, that's one of the reasons I think with 4 divisions, there ought to be an MVP in each division. You play 162 games to win your division.
But that dilutes the award and takes some of the luster off of it.
I care less what the writers think. They vote. But the fact remains that you don't always play your top players against the opposition division at times.
But you will concede this.
Well,
the divisions mean more.
Try and sell me.
They mean more in the National League.
Yes,
he pushes a bunt up the third baseline. Gruber charging, no throw. So Phillips, red hot in September, is 2 for 3 in the first playoff game.
And on an unusual count, 2 balls, no strikes. Kelly Gruber figures now he's going to hack away, maybe try and come up with an extra base hit. He conceals it well, doesn't hardly slide the hand up the bat till late, and out comes Cito Gaston. From interim manager to manager, Acker keeps throwing to the American League Eastern Division champ manager. Will he be back next year? I guess if Cito wants to, he's going to have to be, but no, there's no telling whether or not he wants to be back.
That was going to be my question. Does he really want to be? Because they almost had to twist his arm in the first place. Well, Mr. Kubek and a nation ponders that question. We take this commercial break. Stieb's finished. Acker's coming on. We missed a pitch while we were gone. We apologize for that. It was a pitch out, and the runner Phillips wasn't going.
Now the possibility of a hit and run becomes even bigger, as Rene Latchman The Brewers Seattle manager, now coaching at third for Tony La Russa. A little bit of speed on first. We got a tie ball game. A sinker ball, curve ball pitcher, not a power pitcher. Guy with a handle the bat, go to right field.
And the count 2-0 on Gallego. Acker in relief of Stieb, who lasted just 5 1/3. There you see Acker's numbers. He won a game in relief in September at Cleveland, ending a string of 14 consecutive losses since '86 with Atlanta. There goes the runner. Swing and a miss by Gallego. Witt's throw bounces there, and he's got the steal. Well, although Witt has contributed with his bat, and although many steals come on the pitcher, not on the catcher, it's still possible that this could be a theme of this series.
Oh, no question.
The A's are very aggressive. Witt is a 37-year-old catcher who doesn't have a great arm, and they're going to test him.
What the Oakland A's Athletics have throughout the lineup, they do not have more team speed. The Blue Jays have more potential base stealers, but the Blue Jays base stealers aren't quite as smart. Some of the younger kids don't know how to take leads.
A high chopper. Gruber can't get it. Fernandez does. Flip throw. Safe.
That bunt by Phillips early out of this inning got Kelly Gruber in a little bit tighter, even for Gallego, in case he tried to drop it down and keep something going, create a first and third. By being in so shallow, he can't get back and get it, and Tony Fernandez, after the deflection, can't throw him out.
Phillips held second. He's Stieb's responsibility officially. Acker trying to prevent things from going completely haywire here for Toronto. Two on, one out. A check down at first base. No. It's ball one. Acker had been exiled to Atlanta. Lost 14 straight decisions for some woeful Braves teams before coming back to Toronto and joining a pennant race and making a contribution in September.
Yeah, pitching in middle relief for the Atlanta Braves, you're not going to get many wins.
In there.
This is something you don't want in game one if they keep tacking runs out. When you go to a 9-man pitching staff, you get that extra position player or bat, which is what the Blue Jays decided to do. You don't like your bullpen to get pounded on early, even though it's only a short 7-game series. The Blue Jays staff is not known for complete games either.
Check swing foul, 1-2. Stieb, who you'd expect to be the game 5 starter Sunday at the Sky Dome, threw 89 pitches. He struck out 6. He walked 2. He gave up 8 hits. He can't win, and he could lose if Phillips scores from second and the A's hold that lead.
And 89 pitches for Dave Stieb is a lot more than for some other guys because of the hard slider and a little bit more strain on the elbow.
The A's with good speed on the bases and great speed at the plate. Acker works, and it's high.
Some people felt that this is the game the Blue Jays had to have. On the road with Stieb, their ace, going. And then when he did get a lead also, well, maybe the Blue Jays can split here, and if Todd pitches well tomorrow, Stottlemyre, we really got something.
Henderson stays alive, spoiling the 2-2 pitch. Tomorrow's matchup certainly favors Oakland. Mike Moore at 19-11. Todd Stottlemyre, the youngster, at 7-7. The A's had Stewart win 21, and 2 others, Storm Davis and Mike Moore, win 19. No American League team has had a pair of 20-game winners since the Tony La Russa managed White Sox of '83 with Dave Duncan as the pitching coach. Lamar Hoyt and Richard Dotson each reached the 20-win plateau. Hoyt won the Cy Young.
Oh.
Hit him. Hit him to load the bases.
Barry Weinberg, the trainer's going to be out. Ricky Henderson in that crouch. Don't know if he's looking breaking ball. The ball, and I'm sure Acker was trying to throw it up and in, but it just tailed in even more. And Ricky, with the count what it was, 2-2, was trying to protect the outer half of the plate. I didn't see if it hit him on the wrist on that bone right above the hand, but that's a bad spot if it did.
Barry Weinberg, the trainer, freezing it for him. It looks to be just above the wrist, left forearm. LaRussa out there, and the next hitter, Lansford, peering over.
Little freezing agent, the ethyl chloride, to help temporarily prevent some swelling in the air, and they'll get an ice bag on as soon as they can. You can see how much Ricky, his head is all but in the strike zone. And striding and diving into the ball, and the ball just keeps following. He can't get out of the way. I don't think, you can talk of all the sluggers in the American League now, that anybody gets thrown as close to as Ricky more often. Because some think he's a hot dog. He intimidates you on the bases. The pitchers get upset at him. That's not to say Acker was throwing him. He wasn't with 2 on in that count.
Bases loaded, 1 out. Remember, the A's grounded into 163 double plays this year, easily the most in the majors. Grounded to short. They're going to turn it. Fernandez to Liriano, takeout slide, and the throw gets away. Ricky Henderson made the play.
There's going to be a big argument. They're going to ask for a call out at first base, and according to the letter of the rule, they should call him out. He slid, but at the completion of the slide, the instructions for the umpires say he's got to still be able to come in contact with that base. And he slid hard. Fernandez is arguing with Dale Ford. Cito Gas does not yet come out. It's the kind of slide you want. The man's on your team. Lansford, one of those very guilty all year long of hitting in the double plays, and what a jump Ricky Henderson had. With the bases loaded, he's going to get it, and here comes Dave McKay saying, keep on going. He's not out of the line. That's a legal slide until he went well past the bag. That's the letter of the rule. And of course, Dale Ford may be thinking of intent.
Of course, by the time he goes past the bag, it's not to get Liriano, because Liriano was out of his path at that point. So 2 runs score, and Canseco bats, taking strike 1.
There on Liriano. Well, what an aggressive slide by Ricky Henderson. The boy with the bases loaded, what a jump you get. Oh, the middle infielder's at your mercy. You get a good aggressive lead as Ricky did.
The 0-1 pitch. Strike 2. Several A's hit into more than 20 double plays individually this year. Lansford was one of them. Their 163 as a team was just 8 short of the record set by the plodding Red Sox in both 82 and 83. And that one looked made to order, but Henderson turned in a key play. Canseco strikes out on 3 pitches. But some big damage has been done. 3 runs come home, 2 of them unearned. Back after this from
The American League Championship Series is brought to you by Acura. Precision crafted performance exclusively at your Acura dealer. And by Coors Light. Pure brewed in the Rockies, the silver bullet won't slow you down. It's the right beer now.
So suddenly the Blue Jays trail for the first time in the game. And let me correct something I said toward the end of the inning. As Stewart goes to work here in the 7th against Mazzilli, and Lee fouls it away. Only 1 of the 3 runs are unearned, because officially you can't assume a double play. Even though had Liriano's throw been true, they would have gotten it. You've got to count the first run that scored on the wild throw as earned. That's charged to Stieb. Then the second that came home when the ball got away is unearned. That's Acker's run.
And Toronto Blue Jays fans sure remember hard slides. Dave Stieb's going to leave. Threw a lot of hard sliders. The elbow stiffened up. And boy, a couple long home runs off him. Henderson and McGuire. Dave Henderson. Hard to say, the hard slide by Ricky Henderson. Fans in Toronto will remember another hard slide. About like that one by Bill Madlock of the Tigers. Knocked Tony Fernandez out for the season, and Blue Jays lost a big lead. 3.5 with 7 to play.
Shallow center field. Dave Henderson comes on to retire Lee Mazzilli, leading off in the 7th.
And I think that's why Tony Fernandez went right to his fellow countryman Nelson Liriano's defense. Went right after Dale Ford after he thought he started a double play, and then Ricky Henderson came in so hard, and you wonder if Tony Fernandez didn't have a flashback to Bill Madlock. But he couldn't get the call.
Liriano has an RBI single, a stolen base, and grounded out. High and away from Stewart. You know, much is about Stewart not getting Cy Young Award, and he won't this year either. Saberhagen is a lock. 3 straight 20-win seasons, no Cy Young. But it really isn't an injustice.
Oh, it's been sensational years, every one of those years singly against him.
Exactly. In '87, Roger Clemens got it. Down the left field line, but out of play. Jimmy Key finished 2nd, and Stewart 3rd. Then last year it was Viola, Stewart's teammate Eckersley, Gubazar, and 4th. Over the 3 years, he's probably been the best pitcher in the league, but he hasn't been the best, not even arguably, in any of the 3 seasons taken individually.
Well, he said early on this year that I don't deserve it. He said it's Mike Moore from my own team. That's before Saberhagen got so hot. It looked like almost every time he went out, he's going to pitch a perfect game. You saw when that foul ball went down the line that the bullpen is going for Oakland. So Stewart has thrown a lot of pitches also. He's gotten in and out of trouble.
Full count to Liriani. Mosby on deck. And Liriano draws the walk.
You know, Bob, over the last month of September, it wasn't just Freddie McGriff that's in a slump. The Blue Jays team has had difficulty producing runs. Very few will take a walk to perpetuate a rally. They don't. It's hard for them to put a big inning together.
Mosby has flied out twice. Grounded to short. Tying run at the plate now on the top of the 7th with 1 out. And a ball high. You know, the individual awards, Cy Young, MVP, are as much a function of timing and circumstance as of individual excellence. Hank Aaron won 1 MVP award, same total as Zoilo Versailles. And that's pretty much what's happened to Stewart. He's run up against great years by others. Hop to the left side, and this one will make the seats. You take a guy like Juan Marichal, if Stewart wants to console himself. Marichal won 20 6 times. He twice won 25, as you see, in '66 and '63. He had a high of 26 in '68, but that was the Bob Gibson year. It was just his misfortune to be a contemporary of Koufax, of Gibson. Drysdale won it 1 year in '62. Later, Tom Seaver came along.
Lloyd Mosby, admittedly, has had a poor year, but he got some big base hits that last week and a half. 1 2-ball games, 1 against Baltimore, important sacrifice bunt last Saturday, which is difficult for this Toronto team to do. Executing fundamentals like bunting and hitting cutoff men. And Cito Gaston's had a lot of confidence in him. In that leadoff spot about the last 40-plus games. Cito said, I know he plays hard. He's been part of the team when we've lost some, and he's going to be part of it when we win some. One thing Lloyd has not been able to do in his career, take advantage of situations like this, because he doesn't pull the ball very much when they throw him fastballs. And with the right side open, the second baseman can cheat toward the bag because he's not going to pull it through the right side too often. Rarely.
Fouled off, and it holds 1 and 2.
You wonder if this will be Stewart's last inning, as there's the right side, and they keep pounding the fastballs, and he's swinging late. But Oakland's bullpen, La Russa does have it going. If Dave Duncan next to him, Duncan will help not only with the pitch in, but also calling pitch outs if he has a feel. Somebody may be going.
Liriano is going on the 1-2 pitch. It's lined. It'll be a double play. Phillips could walk it over there,
And
he just lobs it to McGuire, and they're out of the inning.
And that's what you call coordinating your pitching with the defense. Throw them hard stuff, play them up the middle.
Here's another edition of Rules of the Game. The Oakland A's trying to make the Coliseum the site of a World Series for the second consecutive year, and leading 5-3 as Parker, Dave, Henderson, and McGuire come up in the last of the 7th against Acker. There's been so much talk in recent years about parity around baseball and how difficult it is to repeat. The A's managed to do it, but it's been a rarity the last decade or so. They're the first team to repeat as a division champion in either league since the Royals back-to-back in '84 and '85, and the first World Series team to win the division the following year since the Dodgers and Yankees met in back-to-back World Series in '77 and '78.
And I guess, Bob, when you hear all the publicity about Dwayne Ward beginning to throw out, the strength of this team, and LaRusso has said this many times, has been his pitching. And it showed this year with all the injuries, and he still had enough depth in the pitching staff to overcome. Storm Davis being out for all the different injuries, a Welch out, and Eckersley especially.
2-1 to Big Dave. Opposite field and well hit. Back goes George Bell. Right to the padding for the catch.
Day baseball, it's out of here. Earlier today, it may have been out of here.
Tomorrow is a day game here. Mike Moore 19-11 against Todd Stottlemyre, who's 7-7, 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. Then out to Wrigley. Game 1 under the lights, which somehow doesn't seem right at Wrigley Field. Giants and the Cubs. Garrelts against Maddox.
What a story that is for Todd Stottlemyre. That's Rob Ducey with a bat in his hand, but 25 years ago, back in '64, his father was called up by the Yankees in August, went 9-2, pitched 3 games postseason play, finished the 7th game against Bob Gibson of the Cardinals, and he's got a chance 25 years later to be a starter in postseason play.
Dave Henderson homered, singled, struck out. In on his fist, rolled to Gruber. Throw across the diamond for the 2nd out. Acker, as you see, is one of many relievers who works out of the stretch even with nobody on base. When Bruce Sutter started doing it years ago, it was a rarity, but now you see it quite often.
Acker, of course, acquired, as you said, from Atlanta, but a couple of other valuable guys had to be left off the roster. They sent Frank Wills down. Frank Wills, the right-hander, very important. In the clincher, 1 hit over 4 innings. Mauro Gaza was 4-0 at one time. He ended up 4-1 when the staff needed a boost. He is ineligible for postseason play. In case there's an injury, each team's got a couple players around that they might replace with a player of the similar position. And they're traveling.
McGuire's homer came in the 6th to tie the game at 3. The A's got 2 more and lead now 5-3.
You know, from that center field camera shot, you can see, if you had seen McGuire before, the little adjustment, opening up a little bit. And Merv Rettenman is the Oakland Athletics batting instructor, so you just stand around, as the hitting coaches do, behind the batting cage, and all of a sudden he's noticing that McGuire didn't look like he was seeing the ball with his right eye. So he was too close. The bridge of his nose was blocking it out. He's hitting with one eye.
He didn't get all of this. And the A's go down 1-2-3. It's the first time tonight that Oakland has been retired in order after 7. They lead at 5-3. 2 more turns left for the Blue Jays, down by 2. Wilson 1 for 2 with a walk and a stolen base. Takes a strike at the knees from Stewart. Although he's been denied a Cy Young award, Stewart is the first pitcher in either league with 3 straight 20 victory seasons since Jim Palmer in the late 70s.
What a horse to be able to go so many innings year after year, and you get him down and you think you maybe can knock him out, and then he keeps coming back, pitching out of trouble. He's no longer the thrower he was back in his early day with the Dodgers. He used to be a 2-speed pitcher back then, hard fastball slider, and then he used to change up on his breaking ball. Then he entered the forkball to become a 3-speed pitcher. And a lot of variations in between on all those pitches now.
Next year, he can try and tie Catfish Hunter's Oakland record of 4 straight 20 victory seasons, what Catfish did in the early 1970s.
He's a marvelous citizen in this area, too. He does so much with schools and substance abuse programs, contribution of time and money. Big forkball again.
Mookie Wilson almost screwed himself into the ground, striking out for the 2nd time for him, and the 6th strikeout overall for Stewart.
If Stewart can't complete the ball game, they've got other people listed on their lineup card. And the pitching side for the Oakland A's, you've got Kurt Young, Matt Young, and Rick Honeycutt from the left side, and Todd Burns and Dennis Eckersley, the big closer, the stopper from the right side.
A ball to McGriff. Struck out, twice fly to center. In there, 1-1. McGriff had almost a Jack Clark-like year in one respect. He had 251 at-bats in which he never put the ball in play. Plate appearances, I should say. Lined hard to left, but Ricky Henderson, almost in his tracks, makes the catch. McGriff had 119 walks this year and also struck out 132 times. So there were an awful lot of times when the fielders could relax with Freddie at the plate.
Well, when Fred was batting 4th with no protection behind him, they were pitching around him. They weren't going to give him anything when he was on the home run tear. And then he got in a rut where he was willing to take a base on balls. He's getting his due in postseason play. Everybody's heard of Dwight Gooden, Wade Boggs from the Tampa area. Freddie's from that area also.
Eckersley in the bullpen, and you wonder, even if Stewart gets through the 8th inning here without incident, whether he'll come out for the 9th or whether La Russa will just say job well done and give it to Eckersley.
That's been the pattern around here for a few years, hasn't it? If you got him and he's a great closer, don't let him sit.
Bell 1 for 3. Rips it, but Lansford's there. And that'll do it. To the bottom of the 8th, 5-3 A's. Tony mentioned all the charitable work Dave Stewart does in this area. He's an Oakland native, went to St. Elizabeth's High School. He gives about $250,000 each year out of his own pocket to various area youth organizations, the boys clubs, literacy programs, anti-drug efforts. He did not have, a few years ago, the best image of any player in baseball, but that has been completely turned around. He's one of the game's good guys.
Had a chance that last inning or so to see how Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan worked their bullpen. They had Honeycutt up looking for Mosby, Wilson, McGriff, and then Eckersley got up, but because Stewart had just a 9-pitch inning, even 2 balls were hit hard, Eckersley sat right back down, so they're not going to let him blow himself away or throw too many pitches in the bullpen. And apparently when Stewart came back in, he must have told La Russa and then Duncan, hey, look, 9-pitch inning, I think I can finish it off for you. He sat right on the bench, put the jacket on, the X sat right back down. There is an art when to get people up, when not to. Perhaps the master is Whitey Herzog, so you don't blow your bullpen away before they get in the game.
Steinbach 1 for 3, a single and 2 strikeouts. Ward's ahead of him 1 and 2. Under Jimmy Williams, and in fairness to Jimmy, Tom Henke was not effective early in the year. The bullpen was juggled so that Ward for a while was the closer. When Cito Gaston took over, he said the first priority here is to get the bullpen back in order with Henke at the bottom. And the bottom fell out of that as Steinbeck gets the dubious hat trick. Terry strikes out 3 times. Tonight on NBC, after your late local news, at least in most parts of the country. Tonight's show starring Johnny Carson.
Well, let me ask you
followed
something.
by David Letterman.
I mean, in the event that this game would go a long time, it gets tied, I don't know.
Right.
Which of those 3 might they scratch where our audience would not see it? Is there anything that could be just pushed off there, or do they just go on with the programming?
I believe that would work in inverse order. That's just a wild guess, but it's my notion here.
Dwayne Ward's stuff can be awesome. The throw in the high 90s, a great sinker. He has struggled lately. You were talking about Henke struggling early. At the end of last season, Ward pretty much became the closer. last few months. And then in spring training and control problems, he can be awesome, and then he can just, for some reason, lose his stuff or the strike zone. He's got a great arm. Catchers hate to catch him. You see more pass balls, wild pitches with him on the mound because his ball runs all over the place. So
let's pause briefly here, Tony, for station identification on the NBC television network.
Come home to the best only on Channel 4.
Here's a 2-0 pitch to Tony Phillips. Drifts outside 3-0. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek at the Coliseum in Oakland. Game 1 of the American League playoffs. 5-3 A's as they bat in the last half of the 8th. Phillips has had a big night. A double, a bunt single, a stolen base. And a strike call. By the way, Jay Leno is guest hosting the Tonight Show this evening. And our own Ahmad Rashad is among David Letterman's guests. Gallego next in the 3-1 pitch. The scheduled hitters in the 9th, as La Russa molds his decision, or perhaps he's already made it. He can let Stewart go back out or bring in Eckersley, but Eckersley isn't throwing. Fernandez, Witt, and Gruber are the scheduled Toronto hitters. Here's the payoff. Inside, Neil Austin.
now the way they've run off the pitcher combination to this point, you might expect some movement again. And Cito Gaston allows John McLaren, his third base coach, a former catcher, to call his pitch out. That's where Ernie Witt will be looking in on, not at Cito, but at John McLaren. That is Al Widmar, the pitching coach right there. And McLaren seated in a crouch. You see him go to some signs to his face if he wants a pitch out.
Gallego hits one off his fist into shallow center field. Mosby coming on, can't get there, and it bounces by him. Phillips to third and maybe more. Being waved home by Latchman. Here's the throw by Bell, backing up.
What a throw.
He's got
what
him.
A throw.
George Bell hustling over from left after Mosby took a spill and firing it home on the fly. The A's are always aggressive. Latchman did the right thing. He waved Phillips home, but Bell gets him at the plate.
Well, Lloyd Mosby fooled. He's playing deeply. He took a step back, can't get it, can't smother it, and look where Fernandez comes and George Bell waves him off. And this is the book. They're going to run. George Bell's elbows well, folks. A lot of strength on that throw. The block off by Witt. He keeps him off the plate. And the call by Davy Phillips. A very, very aggressive play by Latchman, Phillips, and a super throw by George Bell. Remember, these Blue Jays outfielders are used to playing deeply in the Sky Dome, and on artificial surface, the ball gets to you more quickly. Bell ran 100 yards to get that ball.
Sliced foul by Henderson. Gallego trailing the play, went all the way to third, scored as a bloop double. And then Phillips is cut down 7-2, although the throw came from straightaway center field. Henderson has grounded out twice, walked, been hit by a pitch, stolen a base.
See if Ricky does swing, if getting hit near that left wrist has any effect. Watched him swing the weighted bat in the on-deck circle. Didn't seem to be having any trouble.
Called strike 2, 1-2. Although he doesn't have a hit, Henderson made the key play in the game, knocking Nelson Liriano off stride as Eckersley gets ready now down in the bullpen. And instead of preserving a 3-all tie, the throw went wild on what could have been a double play, and 2 runs scored. That's the difference. This one almost gets away, but a good block by Witt.
He is leading the club in wild pitches, in fact, the league, and that's one of his most effective pitches. He throws so hard, he will bounce a lot of breaking balls. And some of them have gotten by catchers this year. And Ernie Witt anticipated well, played the rotation, got the body out, and knocked it down. That was not an easy play. But it's a common pitch for Dwayne Ward in these situations.
Here's Ward's 2-2 pitch to Rickey. Backhanded by Witt in a full count as Gallego dances back to third.
Dwayne Ward has 13 wild pitches this season.
He'll take his chances with Lansford.
Ernie Witt's going out right now. This is one of those situations. Ernie looking back into the dugout where if Rickey Henderson wants to steal, they will probably not even throw through. They'll let him go in fear of a wild throw or that he might score off third base. So signal probably will go out that I'm not going through.
There have already been 6 steals in this game, 3 by each club, which is an American League playoff record. The Major League record is 7 in a National League playoff game between the Reds and Pirates in '75, and Cincinnati had all 7. Pirates didn't steal any. Big Red Machine swiped 7 in that game. So if they concede this base to Rickey, it'll be a both teams combined record-tying performance. This is inside to Lansford, and Henderson just trots in there. Left-hander David Wells just got up.
Who has had trouble getting his curveball over the last couple of outings. His bullpen has been so good for Toronto. Ward and Wells struggling lately with the 9-man staff.
It gets away. There it is. Witt throws to the plate. Now he just holds on. He looked at it, realized he didn't have a play. And a big extra run for Oakland.
It just seems when Dwayne Ward gets that man on third base, he wants to overthrow, and things happen. His stuff is, Gene Nelson has that kind of stuff on the other side. He's got a great change, but Nelson's fastball is all over the place, tough to catch. But Nelson doesn't throw as hard as Ward. That's going to get the long, slow walk out of the dugout from Al Widmar. Baseball historians might remember this man who's been around baseball for, I guess, about 50 years, managing, pitching coach, front office positions, pitching coach on the '64 Phillies team, an old St. Louis Brownie. Not too many of those left. David Wells.
Widmar has been the Blue Jays pitching coach for 10 years. That's the longest continuous tenure of any present Major League pitching coach. And as you say, he knew the heartache in '64 with Gene Mauch, when both he and Mauch were criticized, whether fairly or not, as the thing was slipping away. And they lost 10 straight down the stretch. They used Jim Bunning and Chris Short on 2 days rest a couple of times. They had been their horses all season long, and the pennant slipped out of their hands.
And most people who observed that season up close, not just players, coaches, and managers, felt that they had no business being there in the first place. I mean, they played like 140 games, like as good as they could, as well as they could. They were overachievers.
The little General Mauch did a great job to get him in position, but that's the way of baseball. You do a great job to get there and then lose at the end, and everybody blames you anyway. Lansford hits it through the middle. They've got another run. It's 7-3 Oakland.
Rickey sure has a way of being in the middle of a lot of things, doesn't he? And will he be here next year? He started here. Billy Martin let him run when he set the single-season record for stolen bases. He's an outstanding player for the Yankees, and he can be a free agent.
Lansford stole 37 this year in addition to his .336 average. The steals were a career high. Canseco's 0 for 3 with a walk. Now it's very likely we'll see Stewart in the 9th inning because it's not as close a game. On the other hand, a consideration for La Russa is this: why have Stewart throw extra pitches needlessly? Because who knows when and for how long he'll need him later in the series.
Plus Eckersley is up again, and it's been a long inning, and after all the pitches, that, you know, the situation changes again. There's Eck, but you stiffen up on the bench, even though he had the 9-pitch inning the last time out, but he sat quite a while on the bench with a pitching change in this inning. And again, you maybe want to give Eckersley some work, because after tomorrow, you got an off day heading for Toronto, and then it's a night game. So Eckersley may want to just refine a pitch and want to throw an inning. That's what's good about La Russa and Duncan. They'll let their pitchers, because they're veterans, determine a lot of times.
1-1. Well, Bell seemed to have kept things in reasonably good order with that great throw from center field, but Ward simply couldn't hold the fort. They were in a 2 runs down situation where, with one mistake, if a guy gets on base, you bring the tying run to the plate, who knows what might happen. Now they're down 4. You've got Eckersley in the bullpen. You'd have to think Elvis has a better chance of coming back.
Oh. And Ward somewhat typifies his Blue Jay team. Inconsistency. That's a label you can hang on him. The offense, the pitching. They look like world champions sometimes for a stretch, and then, as they did the first couple months of this season, you don't know what you're going to get. Duncan, a little part of those great Oakland teams.
Caught with Oakland, with Cleveland, with Baltimore toward the end. Not much of a hitter, but a fine receiver. Canseco comes up empty, struck out twice, goes 0 for 4 with a walk, but it doesn't seem to matter. 7-3 A's. Just as we faded away to commercial, you caught a glimpse of Eckersley turning and trotting in from the bullpen. So La Russa has made his decision. As it turns out, it's not a save situation. With a 4-run lead, Eckersley saved every game in the 4-game sweep of the Red Sox last year in the playoffs, and was the LCS MVP. His first pitch to Fernandez. Tony grounds it down to McGuire. 1 out.
An underrated first base you don't hear much about. McGuire, an outstanding throwing arm. I don't know any reliever can come in either league. I guess there are some, but who can come in and spot the ball under any circumstance where he wants to off any kind of pitcher's mound, like Eckersley. It's a hard sinker. Left-handers, obviously, with his delivery, give him a little more trouble than the right-handed hitters. Backdoor the curveball on you. He's only walked 3 all season. About a strikeout per inning pitch.
A ball inside the width. That truly bears repeating. 3 walks in 57 2/3 with 55 strikeouts. 1-1 to Ernie Whitt.
Remember when Joe DiMaggio came out here as a coach for Charlie Finley, and that big year Reggie had with quite a bit of help from the Yankee clipper Joe D. Across the bridge in San Francisco. Looks pretty good yet, doesn't he? In fact, how come at his age he looks better than you and me?
Well,
what?
You pose these rhetorical questions, and
Fella nodding his head. That's Dick Butler, supervisor of umpires, and Dick Wagner used to be the GM at Houston and the Big Red Machine in Cincinnati.
1-2 pitch to Whitt.
On the fist.
Here's Canseco going back, and as he makes the catch, let me adjust a statement I made about him a moment ago. He did go 0 for 4, but it was worse than I said. He struck out 3 times tonight, not 2. Looks like his mates will get it done without a big contribution from last year's MVP.
The kind of game when you're ahead, first game of the league championship series, on the road, you don't like to let get away with your ace on the mound, Dave Stieb.
Gruber 0 for 2 with a walk. They had a 3-1 lead with Stieb, and knowing that tomorrow afternoon they've got the inexperienced Todd Stottlemyre, a 500 pitcher, against 19-game winner Mike Moore. Their realistic objective was to come out of here with a split, and tonight was their best chance.
Well, they got a little power from McGuire and Dave Henderson, and then some very aggressive base running. And Dave Stewart just hung in there, didn't he?
One-two pitch. Down the right field line, Canseco chasing it, and Jose makes a nice running catch. So there's his contribution to a 7-3 A's win in Game 1. It took a while for the fans here to stir. It was almost eerily quiet for the first 4 or 5 innings. McGuire's leadoff homer in the 6th brought them to their feet. A's wound up scoring 3 runs in that inning, and that man, Ricky Henderson, made the key play. Lansford, with the bases loaded and 1 out, hit what appeared to be a double play ball to short. Fernandez flipped to Liriano. Had the pivot and throw been good, the tie would have been preserved. Henderson knocked Liriano off stride. The throw went wild. 2 runs scored, and the A's win 7-3.
Game 1 of the American League Championship Series is brought to you by Mazda Cars and Trucks. Mazda, it just feels right. By Extra Gold Draft, the party time beer with a full tilt taste. By the First Brands Corporation, makers of Prestone Advanced Formula Antifreeze. And by American Airlines, something special in the air.
There's the story, Tony, as the fans, about 50,000 of them, a capacity crowd, file out of the Oakland Coliseum. But they'll be back early tomorrow, a noon start Pacific time. Mike Moore, 19-11, against Todd Stottlemyre, another right-hander, who's 7-7.
There were some contributions with solo home runs, like this one from Mark McGuire. Hit very deeply off Dave Stieb. Dave Henderson hit one, but some other contributions also. You look at the 8th and 9th hitters for the Oakland Athletics, Tony Phillips and Gallego, they were on base 5 of 8 times, and then Ricky, after getting hit with a hard slide, and a couple runs come home.